It's time. It's time. We've hacked and fixed our families, so there's nothing left to do but watch television.
Oh God, if only.
Yeah, but don't get me started on my family. Although I did, so the good thing about funerals is you get to see long lost cousins,
Mhm.
and my prize, I suppose, for having a grandmother repose on Christmas Day was about a month and a half later. I got to see a whole bunch of cousins that I hadn't seen in over a decade,
Mhm.
and last time I saw them, they were all little kids, and now we're all adults and able to interact as adults, and that was really delightful. And I got to play some of my counselor magic and like try to like ask like some more than superficial questions, and I was so delighted. Like they went with it, and we got to have like actual conversations. It was really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the fun part was so one of my grown up cousins, that like the age gap is enough that um I was able to share stories about being at his parents' wedding. uh, and they got married before they had kids. So
Mhm.
that was I don't know. I maybe appreciated that more than anybody else, but that was fun. We had
Nice.
like a 20-year age spread between like oldest and youngest cousins. And
Dang, I thought
yeah,
my cousins were and I were far apart.
yeah. Yeah, I suppose you got nothing. Although actually, so um but yeah, on my dad's side, it gets beat because how would it be? So on the wait, how am I thinking? I don't remember my full like Pisimio Sevilla family tree, but it's these collections of like a family with like 8 kids meets a family with 6 kids, and all of their age spreads are such that by the time like kid number one has their first kid, by the time kid number 9 has their last kid, like the age spread there is such that you have like grandparents and grandchildren that are like 2 years apart
Mhm.
because
Wow.
family shrubberies are interesting
Mhm.
in large families, and I am peripheral to one of that, and it's like talking a different language to
I bet.
know who's who and all of that.
I bet.
It's super fun. So speaking of Catholic families, let's talk about Nazis. Welcome to the Word and Journey podcast. Conversations with friends about stories that shape us and make us think, and some stories that are just for fun. We're busy people reading books in realistic increments. Follow along in the book and join in the conversation, or just sit back and enjoy. Our aim is to unpack the story and offer you things to ponder. Either way, thanks for being here. Welcome back to the Word and Journey podcast, stories that shape us and make us think and induce us to binge watch sequel seasons. This is kind of a new thing. We are covering our first sequel that we have ever covered on this show.
Wow, look
And
at us.
yeah, we're kind of special. And I guess we got to test the maxim of sequels are always bad or something. That seems to be the pattern that sequels are rare sequels rarely live up to their predecessors. I
Mhm.
think Toy Story being a notable exception.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I heard Guardians of the Galaxy might have been one, but then I kind of didn't fully appreciate like that whole franchise anyway because it was a little goofy for my tastes. But
Mhm.
anyway, and welcome back, Jake. It's
Hi,
great to have
it's
you
good to be
back
back.
on the show. Yes. Um, the listener may remember Jake from The Great Divorce in 1984, season 1 of Hunters, and then talking about holiday stories because I thought that would be a fun idea.
Why not?
Yeah, and you were right. It was really nice for you because you didn't have to edit anything, and I spent so much
Oh,
time
nice. Especially
on
because
the
that was one of your first video ones too, right?
that was one of my first video ones, yeah. So,
Yeah,
and
that's a lot. That's
it
a
was
lot
it
to
was
edit.
yeah, it was fun. It was a fun project, but it took a long time. So, anyway. But yeah, so to the listener, glad you are here with us, and we are back. We are We watched the Amazon Prime show Hunters season 1 last year sometime whenever they came out, and as of the date we're recording this, I still have not yet dropped those episodes, but they're coming
Oh,
soon.
really?
They are edited and ready to go.
I
I
love it.
need to actually drop them. So to the listener just dropping in with us, so there will be spoilers, lots of spoilers. We will spoil everything. But you do have the option of simultaneously binge watching both seasons of the show and binge watching both seasons of my show as well, because we'll be the commentary. And that's just the gift that I'm giving to the world. So, anyway, yes. So I will briefly narrate the basic premise of what this is, and then we'll talk commentary, characters, themes, social justice, religion, etc., etc.
I love it.
Yes, we do cover politics and religion because we can.
Why not?
Anyway, yeah,
All the things that you're not supposed to talk about at Thanksgiving dinner, right?
right. So don't play us at Thanksgiving. Christmas is fine, but not Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Definitely not Thanksgiving. Right. So so the premise of the show, so it's set in the 70s in the United States on, and I'm forgetting. I think a lot of last season happened in New York, New York, New York.
Yeah.
So the premise is that following the atrocities committed in World War II against the Jewish people, there is a group of industrious and elusive and vigilante-ish individuals who have taken it upon themselves to hunt down Nazi war criminals who are in hiding in the US and exterminate them like roaches. And they're led by who they believe is Meyer Offerman, who's played by Al Pacino. He's a really fun character. I really love hearing him talk, and his
Oh
thick
my
accent
gosh.
is so
It's
good.
so good.
Yes. And so Meyer Offerman connects with who is his supposed grandson, Jonah Heidelbaum, played by Logan Lerman. And they and the Meyer Offerman character has this group of, I guess they're kind of like the Justice League, sort of. The I don't know. They or
It's
maybe more
very
like the Mission Impossible.
anti-hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, closer to Mission Impossible. Like the series definitely has like a Quentin Tarantino heist plus heist, I guess, sort of vibe.
Yeah. And then there's an FBI agent, played by Erica Hinton, who's an African American woman who, at first, she's hunting the Nazi hunters because they're doing illegal things, and she wants to uphold the law, and so then she gets caught up in the drama. And then there's our Nazi characters who are trying to take over the world and then start the Fourth Reich. It's this lady who is called the Colonel, and who we later come to find out is Mrs. Hitler, and her you know
I mean, you're not wrong.
right. um yeah. So it's her, and her main hitman is the I understood Travis's character to be of German descent, definitely a Nazi at heart, but like raised in America or
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah, like his parents weren't associated with the Nazis at all. Like he's definitely this sort of like grassroots white supremacy Nazi sort of character.
Yeah, and he's a complete psycho, very sadistic.
Yeah.
So we'll comment on him coming up because he's very commentable and has really big pecs. So
So big.
so big. Anyway, so season 1 ends with them hunters thwarting a Nazi plan to blow stuff up and kill a bunch of people, and that plan gets thwarted, and then the twist of it. So again, we're totally in spoiler land. But if you listen to season 1 of our show and watch season 1 of the show, then it's not a spoiler. But we
I
discover
hope
so
that you watch season 1 before you listen to us talk.
yeah. So the whole time they're hunting a particular Nazi war criminal called the Wolf, and at the end, the twist is Jonah discovers that Meyer Offerman is actually the Wolf, who is he actually killed Meyer, the real Meyer, years and years ago, and he assumed his identity. So then anyway, so there's that whole drama shuffle. It was a really well done twist, I think.
Mhm.
But
Oh yeah, I definitely didn't actually see that coming. I knew that something seemed off about Meyer, That just wasn't the twist that I was expecting at all.
Yeah, so a good twist. And so then season 2, when we pick up, it's 2 years later, and we catch up with Jonah, who is enrolled in a college program. He's got a girlfriend who thinks his name is Sam, and she thinks he's a history student or something. And I'm like, oh, she gonna die,
Mm-hmm.
because
Oh,
that's
she
what.
has major like collateral damage vibes for sure.
Very, very much, yeah. So high drama potential there. And so
As we
so
found out at the end of episode 3.
yeah, yeah, very much so. We'll get there. But anyway, so Jonah is still hunting, still hunting people. We come to find out he something really bad happened in Spain a while ago, and so all of the other hunters have disowned him, which makes it
Mhm.
awkward when he now needs to reconvene with them. Meanwhile, Agent Morris, Millie Morris, our FBI agent, she is also hunting Nazis, but trying to do it in the legal way and trying to bring them to justice through the courts. It's not really working. She almost has a guy, and then has to ends up having to kill him herself because the courts are going to let him go. That's frustrating. Um, Harriet, the nun with the gunslinging nun,
The gunslinging nun.
whose real name was Rebecca from childhood. Anyway, so she is posing as a governess somewhere in Austria. There's this total like nod to Sound of Music imagery, and
Oh
then
yeah.
it's a brutally ending scene. Um, Lonnie, the Flash, the actor, is now addicted to cocaine and getting petty work. And I didn't get a clear sense of um, where Roxy's character, or where um, what's Carol Kane's character's name?
Oh, shoot. I wrote it down. I'm
Marie's
so
widow.
horrible with names. I'm
That's
so
okay.
impressed with like you were able to call all these actor names and it was great.
Some of them, yes. Well,
It's in
so
my
it's
notes. Damn it.
yeah,
Mindy. Haha.
Mindy, right? Right. We watched the show. We like the show.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't get a clear sense of where they were at, other than just kind of living life. So there's there. Uh, Joe, the soldier, from he not from World War One. It was, I think, the Korean War or the Vietnam War. I guess
Mhm.
it would have been the Vietnam War.
It was Vietnam.
Yeah. So, and he has a lot of trauma there. But at the end of season 1, he got captured by Hitler's people, and so when we pick up with him, he's been like brainwashed and inducted into Hitler's regime, and we're curious what will happen with him. And Chavez has broken his way out of prison, and he's killing his way back to his people. And the colonel is in Argentina playing second fiddle to Hitler and missing her young love or something. And that's where we pick up. And yes, what are yeah in
Okay,
terms?
can we talk about like the first episode opening with a Yiddish version of Milkshake?
Oh,
Like
that
the song Milkshake, my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. I guess they didn't quite open with it, but it was definitely one of the first scenes and I was dying. This it was right. It was during the cut to Austria, um, where the nun with the guns meets the candy store owner, and it was just like I had to pause it for a minute because I was just dying. It was so well, like the entire production of this series has been fantastic.
I completely missed that reference because I
Oh
didn't
my
know that
gosh,
song.
really? Yeah.
Yes. So okay, homeschool moment because I didn't know that song.
Oh my
But
goodness.
yes. Oh wait, was that Harriet or was that Hava?
I thought that was Harriet. It might have been Hava.
It might have been Hava. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the new character. Is this so the introductory scene is this lady who she goes into this Austrian candy shop and tries to buy candies and ends up cutting this guy's eyes out because he's a Nazi.
Hmm.
Um, nice and grotesque for your entertainment. But so she's also a Nazi hunter, and then so part of the twist there is uh well, so throwback from season 1. So there were intimations that Harriet was literally Harriet the spy and hunting Nazis, but for someone else. And so she's like
Mhm.
making these secret phone calls, and we're not quite sure, is she a good guy, a bad guy, or like what's her deal? And so it turns out she's working with this other Nazi hunter who turns out to be Jonah's aunt, who nobody knew was alive. And so Hava, who is the aunt, and Harriet and their young fella George, they end up thwarting one of the hunters' like efforts at something and capturing them all, and then they all become one big family, which I thought happened a little too easily.
Yeah, it does feel convenient for sure, and I can't tell if it's convenient just because of plot sake or if there's yet another layer of whatever's going on. I do feel like if it's another Nazi hiding as a Nazi hunter, it's going to be kind of a hat and hat sort of situation. So I hope it's not. Like I hope, like as much of a kind of like, this is kind of convenient of a twist as it was. Like if Chava is Ruth's sister, and Ruth didn't even know that she escaped. I think it's pretty good to the story at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the how torn Harriet still seems to be. It doesn't seem like she was fully bought in with what Chava was, or Chava's organization at least. Like it seems like she's developed a true bond with the hunters.
She is a really nicely complex character, and
Mm-hmm.
she draws out the divided loyalties because well they're so on a spectrum they're all really brutal and they're all doing illegal
Oh
things, but
yes.
there's a sense where uh so there's a sense so part of Jonah's thing is he's living as Sam. He's got this girlfriend and he's lying to her about who he really is because his thought is, we'll go on one more run, we'll catch one more Nazi prize, and then I'm done. And he wants to walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you get to know Hava, and she is her work. She is the Nazi hunter, and she very closely identifies like this is her. And in at the last at this dinner scene with her and Jonah toward the end of episode 3, she's talking about why she didn't reveal herself to her sister, and it was partly she saw that Ruth had Jonah, so she was fine, but she's also like, I'm a Nazi hunter. I love my work, and
Mm-hmm.
I like who I am now. And so there's a different flair. She's a little bit more reckless, a little bit more bloodthirsty, and uh, there's not really an indication she wants to walk away from this. Whereas Jonah is very much done with it.
Right.
So
Which I mean, like they're going after the biggest fish, so
right,
I can get that.
yeah, yeah. So that then is the premise for season 2 is the Nazi hunters have discerned, hey, Hitler's still alive, and we might have a chance to bring him to justice ourselves. So the idea is, let's kill Hitler before he just dies on his own, because that will make us feel better, and
Yeah.
that will fix something. So uh, yeah, so we meet the character of Hitler, uh, which I'd be curious your take on how they characterize him.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about that. Like they portray him, to me at least, they portray him as this very scared man. Like even as old as he is, like he's set up in this whole big giant compound in Argentina, and he's like this very frightened man. They like he hears the hunters coming for him again. And then like there's this whole like it's 2 episodes long where they're kind of dealing with this whole area in Argentina, and they figure out who the courier is, who's like the only person who knows where Hitler's compound is, and they get some of the information, and I think they end up killing the crow, and like you see Hitler come up to Joe, who by this point has been brainwashed. There's a whole other like subplot that we haven't gotten to yet, and is very like visibly, and like the actor portrays it really well. The Hitler is very visibly afraid, and sending Joe after them. So I think they did a good job. I like that it's very much not the stereotypical, because there's been a lot of series that like brings back Hitler as a like the ultimate evil back in like the 80s or the 90s, or Mecha Hitler or whatever, which like a lot of those are fun, right? A lot of those are fun and campy. I loved oh gosh, what was it called? Nazis on the Moon was like the primary premise. Oh, it's gonna kill me. I'll look it up. But it was just like super campy and ridiculous. And I'm glad like there's a lot of camp that goes on in this, and it's produced really well. But there also is a huge like several plot lines running around, and so I like that the Colonel is really still taking kind of the lead and trying to organize everything under Hitler's nose. Not that it seems like it's very difficult. He's very much like almost sort of towards dementia, at least the way that the actor is portraying him. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
think it as far as like secret Hitler plot lines go, this one's been a pretty good one.
I am kind of liking it where because there's these layers to it where I mean he's talked about in our casual nomenclature as like the epitome of evil, like our modern day
Mm-hmm.
Antichrist. But then you see him like almost humanized in a way for the reasons you're stating, that he's presented as old, as frail. Like the way they did the makeup, like you see him, he looks blind.
Mm-hmm.
He's not that's not part of the story, but just like his
Right.
eyes are like super pale in that way, and he's like gotten chubby and gray and everything. And it's interesting. So there's this really interesting scene. So this is the scene where the Colonel hooks up with Travis by a pool, but she is talking about her relationship with him and being groomed by him, and
Mm-hmm.
then she sees who he is. She sees the myth, the legend that everybody else sees, but she also like sees him naked in bed, and she's like, oh, and he's like fat and he's hairy and he's sweaty and blah blah blah, and he's like,
Which,
and
for spoiler alert for those who don't know, most humans.
most humans what?
Oh, like in the light of the moon, as it were. Like,
Oh, right. Yes, yes. Most people don't look like a porn star,
no,
right?
as much as I
Um,
want to. Like, I don't know. I keep trying to get rid of this. So we digress. Um,
right. Yeah, I'm sure somebody loves you.
oh,
Somebody loves you, Belly. So yeah. Um, but all that to say, I mean, I was appreciating that slant on it of
mhm.
uh, he's a human character. He's done really horrendous things, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't get the sense that they're trying to like invite the reader to like empathize with him or pity him so much. Well, maybe. No, what am I thinking? There's kind of a sense. What am I thinking? There's some stories where we're led to like humanize the villain. Like this happened in Star Wars, I think. Like in the
Mhm.
whole how they did the Darth Vader Anakin story,
Mhm.
we come to like appreciate him as a person, and in a sense like him, and he comes across as like kind of redeemable. And I don't get the sense that they're doing that here, because they're not presenting Hitler as like redeemable per se.
Right.
They are presenting him as like kind of ultimately pathetic and like not actually super threatening, or at least the way that they present it, they're presenting the Colonel as his wife as like the real threat, like she's the real brains and bronze, and um like she's actually running things.
Mhm.
So
Which, like, I was really confused at, especially this time or this season round. I was like, wow, their ages seem really different, like quite far apart. And I just looked them up, which, like, God, I hope that nobody looks at my search history after watching all of these and trying to like pull stuff together. I was looking up their relative ages, like in real life, and I think Hitler, if I'm doing my math right, Hitler was like 23, 24 years older than Ava Braun. Um, Ava was born in 1912, and Hitler was in 1889.
okay.
And so, like, it just goes to, again, like, this is historical fiction of a movie, of course, but like, dang, they did a really good job on all their research.
Yeah, yeah, Hitler's 24, 25 years older than his wife,
Yeah.
and then his wife is like at least as much older than Travis, and so
The cycle of
yes, yes indeed. Okay, so that's how they're characterizing him. Um, let's see other interesting characters. Um, so the one of the other interesting just like character developments is like the Jonah character.
Mhm.
So which I gotta say, so I generally find Logan Lerman to be like really dashing and attractive and like a really great looking guy in just about any context. I'm having a little bit of a hard time with the long hair though.
It is throwing me off. It's very, I mean, it is very period appropriate. He
Very
looks like my dad.
yeah.
Like
I,
my dad at that same age, and all of his brothers had the
yeah.
same haircut.
Right. And I love the haircut. It just maybe it's because I'm so used to him like being clean shaven with short hair.
Sure.
Seeing like grow up in this way. Uh, I don't know. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not like super super. I mean, it doesn't ruin the show by any means. It's just like he's got this like flippy hair now. So
Right.
anyway, but yeah. So the interesting thing about the interesting thing about his story, I think, is he has his doing the whole double life thing, and I think that resonates. That hits a special spot because of the work I do with like a lot of addictions, and has a lot to do with like a lot of like infidelity and betrayal and everything. And so
Mhm.
I'm just and part of why that it gets exciting for some people is because it is dramatic and it is chaotic, and there's uh the intrigue of an affair isn't um the draw isn't always like the actual sex. Sometimes the draw is um the lying or the hiding in double life. And then granted, like this character, he's not having an affair, but he is telling a lot of lies, and very much like he's Jonah the Nazi hunter, but his fiance who she loves him thinking he is Sam the history student or something,
Right.
and I'm just like I don't know, it's super obvious that something's gonna blow up. And so I'm just like
Oh,
watching it and like
absolutely.
cringing, and they're like, "Oh, they're such a sweet couple," and so they seem so happy together, and I'm just like, she's gonna die, probably. They're for sure gonna break up or something,
Oh yeah.
or I don't know.
Either that, or maybe Clara joins the Nazi hunters. It could be a fun romp.
That could be a fun spin if that happens. So
Mhm.
we'll have to see when we get to those episodes. But yeah. Yeah, so it's fun characters, and I agree. I mean, I've appreciated the 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 craftsmanship and the artistry of the show.
Yeah.
Like the shots are really beautiful, the scenery, the costumes, the hair, the people, um, how they use the music and everything. It's really beautiful. Which other fun note about like the Hitler character. Um, I mean, I would assume that they do this with the other characters, but it just feels the most overt with him. But he very much has his own theme with like bassoons or a tuba or some like really low like ominous like
Oh, I didn't
yeah
notice that.
yeah it actually it reminds me of did you ever listen to Peter and the Wolf?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that's your homework. It's this yeah it's this it's Peter and the Wolf, but it's this orchestral piece where there's a story, but each character is narrated by a different instrument, and so Peter is like the strings are like the da 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 da, da and there's like a
Okay.
bird that's a piccolo and a duck that's like another woodwind or something, and then there's like Peter's grandfather who's sort of the antagonist, and he's played by the contrabassoon, and there's just this like really deep fat bass sound or something, and anyway Hitler scene kind of reminds me of the grandpa, and there's a part that's almost it's notable, but I almost like critique it because it feels like they're like telegraphing him a little bit, or like they need to convince you that he's bad and evil, so they have to throw in this really obviously
Hmm.
ominous soundtrack bit, and none of the other characters quite get that, and so I'm like, is he really dangerous? I don't know.
Right.
He's got
Well,
dangerous music.
yeah, and I feel like they're compensating a little bit because we see very little of the Hitler character. I think across the 3 episodes that we just watched, we had maybe 5 minutes of him. So I guess I can appreciate the compensation, but it's also apparently I need to go back and like look at his scenes and re-listen to it. But like there's a bit of extra ridiculousness to it. And again, just kind of, it sounds like it's highlighting the frailty in the lack of omnipotence, I guess, in such an evil and vile character. So I don't know. It to me, it still points back to just how phenomenally well this series has been produced.
I really like it. I mean, I mean, I read some of the reviews and they say it's pretty terrible, but I'm like, I like it. It's intriguing. It's engaging.
Mhm.
One of the more thematic questions I want to explore as we have these conversations is, does this qualify as great literature, or could we by the end of it could we say this is something that should be consumed by people? And I guess we'll tackle that one, um, but it's definitely engaging, definitely entertaining.
Mhm.
The storytelling, it invites you in, it invites me in. I get to the end of an episode, I want to find out what happens. we
Right.
get to the end of episode 3, and like you said, like Clara has come all the way to South America to confront her two-time and two-faced, wanker of a boyfriend. Her words, not mine.
I love it though.
Uh,
I just love
it's so
that
good.
scene, and it just seemed like it rolled right off her tongue, and it was great.
Yeah, it was really good. So getting into some of the more interesting themes that come out, and I think there are some interesting themes. One of them, so we're talking about Hitler's frailty and uh, how he's in a sense taken down a notch from like the super epitome of evil, at least for us, the viewer. But watching the characters, they've dropped everything to go to South America to try to
Mhm.
kill him. And this whole season, 8 episodes, like the I mean, and it's the last season of the show too. So it's like they're wrapping the show with like, we've got to get this guy, and it's got to be us and not nature. Um, I don't know. Something about it just feels obsessive a little bit.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Like,
I feel like to be in that position, you have to be. Like, especially, think 1970s, 1979 is when the like present day of this is taking place, because there's also that B plot taking place in 1975 that we haven't talked about yet. But like that, think about the logistics alone of just travel back then. Like I wouldn't be able to log on to like flights.google.com to book a flight to Buenos Aires. Like it would have taken some serious planning and finances too. Like we complain about how expensive flights are now, but comparatively they're actually quite cheap.
but on the other
Um,
hand, back then they didn't have to go through TSA.
that's true. That is true. And after, let me tell you what, after trying to get 20 athletes in
In wheelchairs.
wheelchairs through TSA at 4 o'clock in the morning when I have
Oh,
not had coffee, yeah, yeah, that would have been interesting. That would have
yes,
been
indeed.
much easier for
Yeah,
sure.
indeed.
Um,
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
but like, in order to continue to have done what they did, even before the second season, like to continue that work, there's a certain amount of obsession that I feel like you kind of have to have, especially as these Nazis are aging, and aging out, dying of old age, probably very likely, and I. Th- this second plot of like the Fourth Reich being like the new wave of Nazis trying to raise under the banner from Eva Braun, who is, you know, one of the original Nazis. Like there's that to carry kind of the plot through, other than just like trying to kill off all of these old men who escaped justice and did really really horrible things. And I think we talked a lot through like, is it truly just to go kind of on this vigilante spree and take out these people who should have died according to justice or whatever, but didn't. Of course, there's also questions of like, should the death penalty be a thing? But we've hashed that out, and we can rehash that too. It's
yeah.
always a fun conversation. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a level of obsession. Although it feels, this season it feels less to me because I don't feel it as much in the main character. Definitely with Hava and her crew, but I don't actually feel it the same level of obsession as I did with Jonah in the first season. And I guess we also don't have the Meyer character anymore.
we don't have the Meyer character in the A plot, and yeah, Jonah is not obsessed over the hunt anymore.
Mhm.
He's on his way out. He's young. He wants a family. He has a shot at that. But Hava is in a different life stage, and I think so. So this idea of obsession, it's interlacing with this question of identity, which I feel is one of the themes that's coming up a lot. Um, in addition to the justice thing, which I do want to hit on that definitely. But coming back to Haba again, when she's talking with Jonah and she's like, I like who I am, and
Mhm.
there is a question of I might have been. Now I'm blanking. It was either a conversation with Agent Millie or with Harriet, but something along the lines of uh, they're Nazis. Of course, they need to get killed, but like, or there's a variation of like, well, I killed this person. Am I a killer? There's this question of are we monsters?
Mhm.
And uh, there's a way where for some of the characters anyway, this hunt has become their lives, and being a Nazi hunter has very much become their identity, and it's a very extreme sort of identity. And so I feel like the way it's written, in order for them to have a stable identity concept, they need a villain to match, or they need a consummate evil to be in existence. And they pinned that on Hitler because I guess he's like the biggest, baddest, most evil thing they can imagine. And so, in their eyes, they need him to be this supervillain, and can't leave room for how the colonel sees him as he's old and
Mhm.
kind of
Ooh.
pathetic. Uh, and it's just so important to them that he is evil and that they must kill him because
Mhm.
the way it's written, without that, they don't have an identity, or they don't have a purpose, or they don't have a structure. Again, differently for different people. I would say that's definitely the case for Hava. Kind of the case for Harriet. Um, not so much for characters like Millie, and definitely not for Jonah, because they're
Mhm.
interested in like other aspects of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we saw that with the other hunters too. Like Lonnie was off lauding his acting career in was it Barcelona? Uh, Roxy was painting forgeries in France. Let's see. Mindy was taking care of her grandchildren. Like it seems like all of the hunters went about their own lives, and to be drawn back into this like this one final battle, like it's definitely to them wrapping a bow on it.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm going to amend my statement a little bit because, and this comes up a little bit around the Jonah character too. Uh, is he says he wants to just go marry his fiance and be done with it. But then also like when we meet him, he's lying to her, and
Mhm.
he's on the stakeout. If we so he, so if you remember like the Biff character from last time, a really well done, really terrible person character.
Oh,
Uh,
so well done.
like Jonah shoots him in the face in episode 1, so he gets like a scene, and I'm like, okay, that's a good dose of him. But to do that, Jonah has to like do this stakeout in a brothel, and again, he's not having sex or anything. He's doing a stakeout, but
Mhm.
that's the level of commitment he has to his cause that he like wants to wants to walk away from. So when his aunt like legitimate questions him on like whether he really wants to give it up or not, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm definitely seeing themes around identity coming out. Wondering what makes a person. Is it the worst thing? Is it the thing that they do? What's your take there?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff around identity for sure. I think there is that theme again of becoming your enemy. We saw Jonah deal with that a lot within the first season, like with his first kill, things like that when he botched the the one in the kind of recording and transmitting room, sort of a deal. And again, we saw that with like the kind of the inverse with the Meyer Wolf character, where Meyer, it turns out, was this horrible Nazi that kind of took over Meyer's life. And so there's a lot of, I think that's going to be a recurring theme definitely throughout the series.
Mm-hmm. I think so. There's another thread around truth, and this comes out again over the Hobbit character because she's Ruth's sister. She's Jonah's aunt. She was someone who knew Meyer, the real Meyer, way back when, and so uh, she's questioned of like, and it comes out she's known that her sister was alive for decades and never said anything, and who is it? I think it's again it's one of the characters is asking Harriet, so because Harriet has known who she is for a while too, and they're asking Harriet, well, why didn't you say anything to Ruth? And she says something like, well, it wasn't my truth to tell, uh, or it wasn't my story to tell, or something. And so there's this question that comes up around the Hobbit character around truth and story, and which seems to kind of come out around like the Nazis in general. Is like, okay, so what is truth, but also who has authority over that truth, and like who has the right to spread it about, and in what way. Which I don't know. I'd be curious your thoughts there too.
Yeah, I don't know that I have too much around that yet. I love her as a character, and I'm really excited to see what's going on.
Yeah. Yes. I'm having some really fantastic dubbing lag too. So
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular from my side.
I could make all sorts of faces at you and then run away, and you would never know. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly, my favorite part about this that I'm curious to see where it's going. I like I said, I've liked the series so far, but the Meyer flashbacks that are going back to 1975, which I think is right before the first series takes place, and seeing like this whole other subplot around another Nazi finds out who he is, and Meyer kills him and kills the guy who told him about him, and like the past is still catching up with him, and I'm curious to see honestly like how they tie this all in together, because it doesn't feel like just another B plot. It feels like there's going to be some sort of revelation that's going to happen in between them both.
Mm-hmm. It's I'm playing with my camera a little bit.
I was noticing. I was like, "There's two of you."
Yes, there are trying to be two of me.
Oh, you might be muted.
Am I back?
Yes. Well, yes, your audio's back, and another face of yours.
Okay. Yes, because I'm playing with stuff anyway. Um.
Nope, your audio's gone again.
Okay. I guess. Okay. So technology is funny. But anyway, but you can see me and I'm no longer dubbed. So anyway. But yeah, the Meyer B plot where he's kind of doing his thing where he's as he's getting suspected and getting caught, he's killing people, and then he's covering his tracks that way. Uh, and so thinking about I don't know, thinking about identity. Uh, I think if we think of identity as something deeper than just nationality or deeper than just like who I say I am, um, like so I've been introduced to this idea of your identity comes primarily from your community, which again, thinking in a spiritual context, in a spiritual community, like that takes in a lot of meaning there. But kind of the other aspect of identity though is things you do, and so so you see here's Al Pacino's character. He's saying he's Meyer Offerman, this Jewish man who survived the war camps, but he's really a Nazi in hiding, and like the way that he acts kind of demonstrates that. Like he does Nazi things, he doesn't do Jewish things, and and watching the other characters too, like You really see this, I think, in the Millie character, where she says she's this FBI agent. That seems to be who she wants to be. She aspires
Mhm.
to be this really justice-oriented person, but then she kills a guy in cold blood. Granted, he's one of her Nazi targets, but
Mhm.
still, it's like it's not an FBI thing to do, or it's not an upright thing to do. And so for her, then her whole identity concept comes into question as well, as she's having to face, well, what I'm saying, what I'm aspiring after is one thing, but what I actually do, what I actually did is this whole other thing. What's the deal, or who am I really?
Mhm.
So
I'm so sorry. My mother is making faces at me in the my office has like French doors with like windows in them.
yeah,
It's very nice, and my mother and my housemate are both trying to make faces at me right now.
okay.
um,
Here's what I pulled out. No, Ma, come on.
oh my gosh. um, yeah, like as far as identity goes, like are you truly the sum of your actions? Is there more to you, and does one oh my gosh, she's still there. Does does one action um break your identity that you've built, or and I don't know how necessarily to answer that. I think that we often find identities like in our work, for example, if we take it to an everyday perspective. Like there's a lot of my identity that I find by um that I find in my job still. Like even knowing that I exist well beyond the confines of my occupation and well beyond the confines of this particular company that I'm with and this team that I'm working with, I still find a lot, at least by default, a lot of my identity in that. And so, and there have been thoughts around, like, if I decide to retire and leave software engineering behind, all that sort of stuff, like, is that part of my identity truly changing? Does a part of me really change with that? And I think the answer is probably kind of both. Like we can hold both things in tension, where there's a part of us that changes, and we are not necessarily who we were yesterday, and yet we still are. Like there's humans are both static and we change. And I think it's an interesting thing to think of in light of, like, if we think back to the Old Testament, one of the big topics of controversy would be like Moses changing the mind of God. How can you change the mind of a being who is the same yesterday, today, and forever? I don't necessarily have a great answer for that. There have been a lot of different theories posited, and when we pass on, I guess we'll find out. Um, but like maybe it is that kind of that paradoxical duality of, like, we are, if, yes, taking for granted that we are made in the very image of God. Like we are both static and ever changing. I think it's kind of cool.
It does make you think, and I mean, thinking about the Moses and God situation is, I mean, some of that kind of hinges on free will. I think,
Hmm.
you eschewing determinism, a strict determinism, and assuming we are created as free creatures who have agency, who have will, and thus don't fit into a mold. And so, that story kind of depicts God's interaction with us, and like an actual relationship where there's two beings who can both have agency and both add ingredients to the relationship, and they have to respond to each other.
Hmm.
And there's something really beautiful about that. um, but yeah, this question of, am i am I just this one thing that I did, which you usually would end up being, am I the worst thing that I've done? For sure, in a lot of my work context, there's these people who are like, I am the worst acting out that I've ever done. I am this
Hmm.
harm that I've done to this person. Or sometimes people might say, I am the harm that has been done to me.
Hmm.
That's a little more dangerous. And or I mean, people will pick on, like, well, I mean, you know, can of worms, like, I'm a gender, I'm a sexuality, and things, because
Right.
I mean, other layers there. But it's like these things that feel so deep, and they feel so big and so powerful, and it's sometimes hard to I don't know. I guess it's hard to balance those with all of the other aspects of ourselves. Or
For sure. And I think I've been finding interesting answers to that, like even in my own coming out process. I think actually, yeah, I wasn't out the last time that we recorded, or I was part during the Christmas season. Of like, I am queer and I might do stereotypically queer things. Is that like the whole of my personality? No, but it is things that I might be doing that I didn't do before, like wearing queer paraphernalia, things like that. Like I have a charm that my grandmother actually gave me. It was very sweet. It's not exactly my style, but it was something that was very meaningful that I often wear around me, and so it's again that sort of like static but changing thing at the same time. Like I've had friends that have noticed a difference, noticed a difference in this sometimes in the way that I talk or the way that I joke, especially around my partner. Um, but it's identity is a sticky question.
mhm. Yeah, and I mean, in your example, I mean, I don't think anyone would be able to say, "Oh, Jake's queer because he wears this like pink bracelet or something." Like it would be again the relationship thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
you take on that label because of this relationship context you
Right.
find yourself in, and you do queer things in that sense. And so so yeah, I mean it's kind of it's identity scene. It's sticky, but it seems like it is. It's tied to here's what I do, here's who I do it with,
Mm-hmm.
and especially what's projected over time. I guess like the time component or the pattern component would be the other part of it too. So um, so then thinking, okay, so here's our so here's our Nazi hunters, uh, and everything. Speaking of pink bracelets, that was a forced segue, I think. Um, but yeah, I guess you get a couple of them kind of wrestling with their identity, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it shows up definitely in the Agent Millie character, some in the Jonah character. In the Hobbit character, she doesn't seem like she's struggling with her identity, but you kind of see this, kind of portrayed with her too.
Mm.
And I guess in a sense too, I mean, watching like the Colonel and Hitler too, you're thinking, um, I guess like another nuance of that. Well, like, I mean, he's Hitler, he has a Hitler name, but she's the one doing the Hitler things.
Right.
So there's that thing too. Yeah, that's the sound of us trying to figure out the mysteries of identity.
Yeah.
I probably, hmm, I'd probably land on something closer to like you are what you do. And so in this case, if you're one of these characters who like what you do in your spare time is you travel across the world to like try to assassinate people, like that's a pretty integral part of who you are. And
Right.
uh it'll be interesting to see kind of what they do. So Jonah's got this girlfriend. She finds out he's got this double life. She follows him to South America to confront him about it, and that's like the end of episode 3. So it'll be interesting to see like kind of how they play with that dynamic of like who's the real Jonah, and what can she actually believe? Um, yeah, because and this is something again that I see come up in my work context as well. Is you get these people who are trying to do recovery work, trying to get sober, trying to build trust with people, and they can say a whole lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what ends up being believable is both a person's actions that they do consistently over time, and also their emotions. Like if you are saying this thing, but you're not doing the action that goes with it, and if you're not like emotionally connecting with me, I'm not going to find you believable.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, other life hack: if you should ever find that you need to rebuild trust with a partner, so actually changing your actions is the most powerful thing.
That does tend to help. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, but also like being emotionally present as well
Mm.
uh, offers the reassurance of I am actually here with you. I'm fully here, and in this now secure relationship that's backed up by different actions. now there is room for safety and trust to grow. Um, so what I say kind of doesn't matter at all. And if I try to explain what I do logically, that even makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can take ownership for what I've done, if I can actually change what I do, and then if I can be emotionally present, and then keep that up for a couple of years, that often will heal quite a few things, or that will definitely create a really good healing environment where change can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Now my brain is stuck in like this realm of like how can you ontologically define what someone's identity is? It's funny the crossovers that I have with like my professional job, because like part of one of the struggles that we're finding is like how do we define what a configuration means at work? But that's a whole other separate tangent. I think like yeah, at the very least, what we do sheds so much more light. If what we do isn't our identity or isn't the whole of our identity, it certainly sheds the most light on our identity. um you know, we can say things and we can have particular motives, and I think that those all play together. Like just judging someone based on my perceived understanding of their actions as opposed to getting to the root of like why they did what they did isn't going to be the whole story either. But I think we see this a lot in, you know, within the life of the church, sadly, is like the church as a whole can often talk a really, really big game as far as you know, altruism, things like that. But then we often see, at least within a lot of the stuff that we've seen in the Western church lately, in the church in America, I guess not just the Western church, but the church in America was what I would say is like there's talking about altruism, and then there's like acting on altruism and actually going out and, you know, into the fens and spinneys or whatever. Um, that like if we don't have actions to back ourselves up, then honestly, what is the identity of our faith really worth?
Mm-hmm. It brings up this question of, well, what do Christians do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do Christians live? And I mean, there's a correlate question that I posed to my guys in my men's group, as well. Okay, so how do sober people live? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
makes your life look different because you are sober in recovery compared to somebody who's not?
Sure.
And kind of the premise of that is that um, if you participate in a value system, and there hopefully there's tradition, community, something around that, that changes how you live and thus changes who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely see this played out, I think, in some really beautiful ways in the Orthodox Church as well. I mean, it is very much an encompassing tradition, um, and I mean, for a lot of reasons, it's transformative. I mean, you know, sacraments being, you know, kind of up there as changing healing factors, uh, but um, but over time, you know, as I learn more of like, here's the rhythm of the church, here's the rituals, here's the traditions, here's just like the life of the church, and participate in it more, more of my life gets organized around that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, going to church is a fixture of my week, going to Vespers is a fixture of my Saturdays. You know, morning prayers, evening prayers, you know, all of the things, they become more fixtures in my life, when so when these things become the non-negotiables, I could say, yeah, this is now becoming my identity. And there's this other aspect too of where, uh you know, I can participate in all of these things, and then like when I was just an inquirer I was starting to, and when I was a catechumen I was starting to, but there came this moment where I said, okay, I'm going to submit to, you know, these particular rituals, you know, baptism, etc. And then the community then looks back at me and validates that I am one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I get my identity from, is the community has seen that I have participated in their tradition such that they can recognize me as now one of them through how I live. But it's a combination of, I step up into the lifestyle, into the rhythm, into the phronema. It's a Greek word for, you know, set of basic assumptions and values and everything, and then they then validate that, and that becomes my identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I can claim for myself. Um, I mean, I can feel it, I can aspire to it, but
Sure.
it's not a real thing until it's validated from the community that I'm trying to join.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. It's very counterintuitive to like the classical individualistic Western mindset, for sure.
It's very not Western individualism.
Yeah, oh, no, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's that counterbalance of like identity. You know, with the way that many of us grew up in the States, is like identity comes from solely from within. And not to say that like the Eastern mindset is that it solely comes from without, but it's definitely like a whole lot more emphasis on the community.
Mhm. Yeah. So then, so thinking back to our story. So if one wanted to be inducted in, if one wanted to self-identify as a Nazi hunter, it sounds
Mhm.
like they would have to have actually killed a Nazi
Mm.
in order to do that. Otherwise, the community would not really recognize them uh, as officially one of them. But since they all do that thing anyway, they all count.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I think that we saw kind of both play out in Jonah's story within the first season as well, and kind of through this too is like, so Jonah found his identity, his group, his whatever with the hunters in the first season, and then now we're seeing like he's lost a lot of that, and maybe he's finding something more with Hava, maybe not, maybe he's choosing to divest himself from either group. I'm curious to see where it goes.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I'll be curious to see how they handle like what is family. Is it just blood, or is it again shared value, shared participation, and everything? And also, can people change?
Mm,
The way that we look at the Nazis, you get the sense that no, they can't change. Hitler will always be Hitler. Never mind, he's old and decrepit and going blind.
mm,
But he's Hitler. He must be evil. Um, but then like all of the other characters are also changing too. Granted, again in the story writing, they're all like they're kind of like all devolving, which is kind of
yeah.
how these shows tend to go. Um, uh, but anyway, I guess we'll see where they go.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, yeah. Any other fun thoughts, musings, references from the first few episodes?
No, this has been good so far. It feels like a bit of a faster pace than the first season for sure, which is kind of honestly nice for me. Like these tend to be pretty long episodes. I think they're about an hour each, as opposed to like the usual 45 minutes, which 15 minutes apparently makes a lot. So I've been enjoying it. I'm excited to keep going through.
Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying it too. So I definitely get the main theme stuck in my head all of the time.
Yeah.
Like when I'm swimming, I'm like doing laps, and I just got the theme like running over, looping and looping and looping. I'm like, okay, I gotta shoot somebody.
I love it.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we'll let you go, there, dear listener. Thanks for tracking with us. So we covered episodes 1 through 3. I should have probably said that at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, edit it in post.
All right, we got. So we are commenting on episodes 1 through 3 of season 2 of Hunters. Next episode, we'll be commenting on episodes 4 through 6, and then we'll comment on episodes 7 and 8 after that, and then we'll have solved all of history, I think.
Yeah,
We'll
definitely.
see.
That's how that works.
Yes. All right. Well, good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. And watch your back. Word and Journey is a podcast by Moses Bernabe. If you like what you hear, consider supporting the show with dollars, reviews, or shares, or all of the above. Word and Journey can be found on most major podcast platforms and on my author Patreon at patreon.com/Moses Bernabe. Moses Bernabe can be found at mosesbernabe.com. Contact info for my most excellent co-hosts can be found in the liner notes. The podcast logo was designed by TJ Todd, with additional development by Moses Bernabe. The theme music is by Aaron Esparza. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.